Right, you listen to me, Dylan Mulvaney. I'm as right wing as they come. I only have a right wing. I literally cut my left body parts off because that's how right wing I am. I'm just like you.
On all the left side?
Only my right side.
Only right side.
That's how right wing I am.
True
Dylan
value
Mulvaney.
hat, too.
Yeah, I got that true value. Dylan Mulvaney.
He only wears true value because it's red.
Dylan Mulvaney.
Dylan Mulvaney.
Damn, you got a lot in your pockets.
Yeah. You know.
Something I heard about today was, since today's April 6th, I guess it's called Pink Moon in Libra. Something I don't normally believe in, but
The moon?
yeah, and it's pretty interesting because they talked about how, like, emotional releases will happen tonight. Apparently it's intense.
What does that mean?
Apparently it's, like, super intense. Well, I mean, not too long ago we had, like, 5 planets align, which is the first time in, like, the last few hundred years. It rarely happens.
Do you believe in any of that stuff? Like any sort of, like, emotional connection or physical connection as a human to space or anything like that?
I used to not at all. But now you could say I've definitely been persuaded because I've went through periods of time in like 2-week spans where I feel a certain way and then somebody's like, yeah, you know, like Mars was just in retrograde. So like, you know, if you like last Thursday or Friday, you felt this way, blah, blah, blah. And then like, you know, on Monday through Friday, you might have felt this way. And if it lines up like perfectly every single time, I'm like, I'm getting convinced at this point. And I mean, you can only assume that like we're so much like percentage of water, and then like the moon literally moves the ocean, right?
Right.
And like it depends, I imagine, how close and how far away the moon is to Earth at different points in time. And like it just moves the waves in different like motions and shit. I can only imagine it moves us, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Yeah, I mean, isn't something always going to be happening though? Like, can't you make a case for every day like something is happening to one of the planets, one of the stars, one of anything out in the space?
I think you can do that with almost anything. Like if
Yeah.
you look at like research, for example, people are
Right.
like, well, the research says this. More than likely, I can get research to bend any single way possible.
What do you mean?
Like if I'm like, oh, if your fifth left toe, like your tiny toe on your foot,
Right.
turns red, then that means you have cancer. Oh, but this study says if that toe is pink, then you have cancer. Oh, if it's orange, then if it's black, then you have cancer. It's like, I think now that's like an extreme case, obviously, like, but I'm thinking more often than not, you can turn different research studies to focus on what you want to justify. So the same thing.
But why? So why do you specifically believe in like these space theories?
Like, I don't even want to say I believe in them, but I've just been proven so many times that the way I responded to things was something out of the normal for me. But the only reason I could justify it was because of that. For an example, let's see, like sometimes they're like, oh, between these 2 dates, you're more likely to get into like an altercation at work. And it's like, wow, okay, like those 2 days specifically that like that was supposed to happen, even though I had no precursor of knowing this, I seem to get into an altercation at work.
Is that
And
one of the
out of,
specific like?
That's happened.
But is that one of the specific like altercation at work? Is one of the actual things?
Yeah, they seem pretty fucking specific. It's not like oh, people are going to be feeling this way. It's like, no, you'll have an altercation more than likely. I don't think it says at work, but it says like you will have an altercation with, and then like I'm not super into this stuff, so I have people telling me this shit, right?
Right.
But I from what I've seen, it's like you'll have an altercation with somebody that's like, I don't want to say of higher standing, but it's like a significant relationship of blah, 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 basically saying like your boss blah
Yeah,
blah blah, or
someone
somebody of like
someone above
higher,
you.
will like you'll have like a disagreement and this will happen, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
And it's super fucking on every single time for me.
But that kind of reminds me of the way that like star signs explain like birthdays and like if you're an Aries, you're this, and it's always like these really generalized statements that people can often put themselves in because it's so vast, such a vast like definition. So that kind of like whenever it says like someone above you and like in that terminology, it's probably super like fleshed out in a way that like you could probably like be like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess like my upstairs neighbor is like above me, you know, like you could put anything, you could fit in the dots as long as you like want to believe that, you know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But when like it talks about like how I'm personally gonna feel on that day, and I don't read into it, so I just have somebody like, oh yeah, on
Right.
these 2 days or these 3 days, like Mercury was in retrograde. I hear that one all the fucking time or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, or Mars or whatever the fuck it is, and they're like, if you felt like, threatened on those days more than usual, where like, your senses were heightened, and I'm like, I think back to those 3 days versus the last 2 weeks, and I'm like, yeah, on those 3 days particularly, I definitely felt that way. Like I'm self-aware enough to know,
You
and
know,
like
you know
keep
what I would
very
do.
good.
You know what I would do if somebody, if I was talking to this person over here, and you chimed in, you were like, I was like, yeah, dude, I was having a bad day. Like I was pissed. I was getting pissed at everybody. And then like you chime in, you're like, well, actually, Neptune was in retrograde, so that's probably why you were getting pissed. And then I'd be like, this is what I would do. I would go, yeah. So, anyways, and
Yeah, it's not something that like most people take, especially if they've never heard it. I totally agree. And that's how I used to be until they just kept fitting patterns. And I really do think like it fits certain patterns.
do the moon phases? Do people say something about the moon phases?
I'm sure they do.
Probably, yeah. I mean,
But look,
I know
it's not like
I
totally
grow like
crazy.
extra hair whenever on a full
Oh,
moon.
yeah?
Yeah.
It's not like totally crazy to like believe in that stuff. Like I used to think it was like fucking nonsense. But then it's like, well, we're on a floating rock. That's a floating rock. I'm sure there's like a
Yeah,
something going
sure,
on
yeah.
between the two. And if it somehow, changes how I think on certain days, even slightly, I can definitely believe it.
Hmm.
The same way like people believe in like certain stones, like, oh, this crystal does this and this crystal does that. You ever
Yeah.
hear that stuff?
Yeah, do you believe in that?
To an extent now, yeah, I actually do. Even when I was a kid, like I always liked that shit, and I never really understood why. Probably just because like I enjoyed what they looked like.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and
Is it
it
like
only makes sense to me.
is it like a touch thing? Do they have to like touch? Because I know like people have like those like obsidian crystals. Obsidian's not a crystal, so that's what pisses me off about those things. Obsidian is not a crystal. You can't crystallize obsidian.
What is it, like a metamorphic rock?
It's like it's volcanic glass.
Okay.
It's not crystal, and people will sell crystals and they're like, yeah, obsidian's proven. These crystals are proven. They're not crystals. I mean, you could like make the claim that obsidian does something, but to call them crystals, they're not.
I think they might just be keeping them in like a class, like, okay, this is a shiny rock.
No, but what they do is they sell them like you can find the shit on Amazon. They sell them in like the shape of crystals, and it's always like this super artificial looking like that classical like polygonal like perfectly smooth. Also, that's super hard to find. Like if you found shit like that, that's worth a lot. If you found
Well, they
that
probably
clean.
like mined them down or shaped them out or whatever.
They're just
Sure you
not.
could.
They're just not actual. that's the
Or
thing.
do you think it's not actual obsidian?
It's not actual obsidian.
Oh,
That's what
okay.
I'm saying. Yeah, actual obsidian. I mean, I'm not a fucking geologist.
Well,
I don't
look it
know what
up.
actual obsidian looks like, but yeah, it's. I can't stand that sort of stuff. But like, what I do believe in stuff like that is incense.
Incest.
In
No, yeah, for sure. They talk about. So I was just listening to a podcast this week that talks about stress hormones, and one of their main things was like, well, are you talking about like they sell things like this? First of all,
those are stuff that you'd see in like around your pool.
yeah.
like
No,
in
this
gravel.
this is apparently just tumbled black obsidian. So like it can get that shiny, and like tumbled, you just fucking put one of those rocks in, one of those from Minecraft, one of those in a tumbler with like certain sands and stuff like that. Those just come out naturally. My dad actually tumbles
stuff
shit.
like that rainbow obsidian.
That one?
People would believe that that's real. That's not real. That's not actual. like super smooth. It just
I'm
gets
not
cool
sure.
looking.
I mean, like it could be because that's in a geology notebook or geology today or some shit. See, the only thing I could think of that being is like obsidian mixed with like oil and then it getting like condensed and compressed
True, it
and
could be
shit.
something like that.
Yeah,
That's kind of cool.
that's the only thing I could think of. Unless it could be fake, of course. It could definitely be fake.
But anyways, about incense.
Yeah.
I definitely notice whenever I use incense because it's a weird thing. So we used to do our podcast set in Caleb's basement, and Caleb uses a frequent incense that's just like a French vanilla scent. And because he used that, that's like the one that like I was like, oh, okay, I like that one. And I got my own incense. Of course, I got that same one because I like the way it smells. And every time I smell that, now it's just like it's a safe feeling. It's like a cozy like a vibey feeling that I like. But anytime it's any other scent, even if it's like a good smell, it just doesn't feel the same. Like I don't feel as relaxed. And like I do think like I mean it's all psychological. Like
It is.
so obviously it's not like I'm not saying that incense has superpowers or anything, but it's still like that's what I think the like crystals and stuff are for. I think it's just psychological. I don't think it's like real. I think people assign different feelings towards what each rock reminds them of, or something like that. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's possible. I think there's so many possibilities. I mean, the only reason I'm like, yeah, crystals could be real, or crystals could have some sort of power is, like I said before, we're on a floating rock. I'm sure rocks have something to do with why we're here and what we're doing. So I'm sure, like, holding this rock could definitely increase this or decrease, oxytocin levels and blah, blah, blah. Increase oxytocin, being happy and stuff. You never know. I don't know enough about it to make a claim, nor will I. Nor will I probably ever. But, yeah, you never know. As far as, like, scents go, yeah, I think when you have, like, a certain scent that you smell in, like, a safe place, sort of like Caleb's house probably was many times, then I think that scent brings up familiarity, and also like a sense of being in that safe feeling. So when you smell it again, you're like, and you feel safe, and that releases like the same chemicals in your brain.
Yeah, it's the same thing as like going to like moving out, for example. Like if you're smelling something different, like it's a different vibe completely. That's why it's recommended that you, whenever you're moving out, you like open windows and stuff, get fresh air. That way you're not like confined to that like new house smell or getting used to like a new roommate smell or something, because it'll stress you out because it doesn't remind you of home or anything. That's why I think, man, you could pin psychological elements to any sort of like, I feel like anything, really.
I mean, that's what we are. We're just like psychological creatures.
That's what makes us humans.
Think with our
minds.
Right.
Crazy.
I think, and I've said this for years, but I think the mind is one of the scariest and most beautiful places that somebody can be.
Have you been there?
Yeah, I've been in my own mind quite a bit. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. Actually, this past week, I've definitely done a lot of self-reflection. I went through a few days of what felt like an ego death, where like a part of me was dying off, and it was definitely hard to let go of. I'm not exactly sure what part of me was dying off, but then I noticed what I will call, and what many psychologists and psychiatrists call a inner child emerge from that and kind of tell me like my younger self's needs, which is something like a lot of people probably don't know about, but is like inner child work. And I think it's very important for almost anybody, no matter how you were raised. You weren't raised perfectly. All your needs weren't met. So when you were growing up, you had a lot of needs that weren't met. And whatever those needs were, or may have been, you might not even have noticed. But, as you get older, you're like, wow, like my partner really shows me, like, for example, a lot of like stuff that you relay in your adult life usually is with a partner. So you're like, oh, my partner shows me a lot of attention during this time. Like, this feels weird. It's probably because when you were a kid, maybe you didn't get attention for whatever that was. Like, there's always things to reflect on. But basically, like, what I'm saying is, like, I had an inner child that must have been needing something. I'm still not even exactly sure what it was. But what I did was like, I'll call it inner child work. And I was like, okay, like what, and I'll do like meditations and shit. And I'll be like, I'll hear my inner child out, right? Like, I'll be like, okay, like what is going on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll hear it out and I'll be like, okay. And then like, I'll resolve it. Does that make sense?
No,
It's
because you're not giving any specific like information, so you're just
Yeah. If it's like it's definitely probably like a foreign concept because it's not something that's like talked about. It's something that's honestly pretty new. I think I'm sure it started like a while ago, but
probably 2012.
yeah, but it really started in like 2021, 2022, especially like the height of pandemic. I think a lot of researchers were doing research about the inner child, and basically like I'm reading a book on it. So I started the inner child work about a month ago, and basically like it was like, in my opinion, opening me up for that to happen. And then I felt it, and it was like one of like the worst feelings of like I said, like an ego death, like people have during like trips and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't tripping, I wasn't using drugs or anything, but I think it happened naturally. But I think what emerged was like my inner child. So what was your question about it?
Do you think? Wait. Well, now I got a new question.
Okay.
You say your inner child emerged from it. Do you know
Right.
what piece broke off? You still don't know.
I'm not exactly sure what piece broke off.
Did you feel something slipping away?
Yeah, I felt like a piece of me. It literally felt like I was dying. It was that bad of a feeling. I don't remember the last time I had that feeling. But
Well,
what I didn't do was run from the feeling.
Mercury was in retrograde.
Dude, I don't know. Something. No, hey, maybe. No, I don't know any of that. But like I said, I don't follow that unless somebody tells me. And if somebody's like, dude, blah, blah, blah was in fucking Gatorade or something, I'm like, yeah,
Was in Gatorade.
definitely fucking was.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, yeah, that makes
Venus
sense.
was in Gatorade.
Yeah. But no, I think it was just like an old part of me that I needed to let go, and I did, and I moved forward. Like I said, it was tough, but I didn't run from the feeling. I sat with it for an extended period of time and was like, I feel like garbage.
Do you think it's something that you'd discover? Like, that you'd be like, oh, shit, I just realized this is something I would have done in the past that I am not doing now. I must have cut that off unknowingly.
Oh, you mean like in the future? Do you think I'll realize? Yeah. It's definitely possible, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would.
I feel like just in general, growing as a person, it's such a gradual thing. I mean, we live so long comparatively to our thoughts and our attitudes and how we react to things. It's kind of crazy that, like, things that we would have done as kids, that it's like, say, everyone does this. Everyone thinks back to something that they did as a kid, and they're like, wow, that was so embarrassing. I was so weird.
Sure.
And it's like, it's weird to think that slowly, like, that doesn't just, like, it's not just like one day you wake up and you're like, I'm not going to wear skinny jeans anymore. That's gay. Or something, Like, gay as in, like, I mean gay. I don't mean, like, gay. I mean gay.
That is definitely, dude, I used to wear skinny jeans, so
yeah,
go on.
That's what I was saying. That's why I was bringing up that example. Like, so, like, you didn't just wake up one day and be like, man, fuck skinny jeans.
I don't remember.
You
how
might have actually, I don't know.
No, I don't remember.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, one day you're just like, or not one day, sorry. Exactly opposite of one day. It's just like, you just, like, find that you're like, oh yeah, I don't wear these anymore. Fucking get rid of those.
Right.
And that goes for not just like physical things like clothes, but I mean like personality traits and stuff. You just kind of like, they just kind of fade away. And like something I was just talking to you before the podcast, like something I noticed that I don't do is I don't argue anymore. I don't argue against people. I don't call people out for their shit. Even if I think that like someone could say something, I'd be like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, I want to so bad, but I don't. Because, like, I know it's not going to get anywhere. It's just going to cause problems. So it's like, it's weird to think that, like, I never had a day where I just woke up and was like, I got to stop doing that.
Right.
So I feel like what you're talking about, like your inner child emerging, I think that's like something interesting that you felt it like shaving off, but you didn't know what it was, but you'll probably discover at some time what you lost.
Right, and I'm not saying like my inner child was lost. Honestly, I think
Your
I think you always have like a little guy with you, like your younger self, and I'm sure it transforms, and I'm sure you could like, I'm sure you could make like a safe space for them to live in, so that way the voice is smaller. But you always have like unmet needs, especially like in your childhood. I don't care who you are, you always have unmet needs.
Mm-hmm.
But and that's just like how humans are, you know, in that regard. No human could ever meet another human's needs, every single need. There's no fucking way.
That's an interesting subject. What would be the ideal childhood? The ideal growing up? Do you think it would be like, and I'm talking like, let's talk basic first.
Yeah.
Specifically, let's say class, upper
Well,
class, middle class.
No. Let's get out of the way. You have enough food, you have shelter, and you have two parents.
Well, needs. Yeah, needs. Well,
that wouldn't be a need, but okay,
parents
we'll
would be
start
needs.
with right.
Food-
We'll start
food and
food and shelter. Yeah.
Right.
Two loving parents.
Right. That would definitely be yep.
Enough money that they're satisfied, because as a kid you're not going to know what money is.
Right.
Like as like a child, I'm not saying like you're dumb. You know what money is, but you don't know what enough money is. You don't know what too much money is, too little money.
Right.
So enough money to live comfortably. So let's say upper middle class, because anymore, dude, if you're below that, which a lot of people are, you're like your parents are struggling. They really are, because everything like inflation and shit, which I don't want to get into, but I also don't know enough about it to speak on it, but it's fucking killing people.
You know what I think the biggest factor is parents. I think parents are definitely, because you could grow up poor, but if you have parents that are like doing everything they can to make sure that you get what you need as a kid, then there's people that have grown up poor and are great people now.
For sure. Yeah,
so
yeah.
but also they wouldn't necessarily look back at their childhood and be like, yeah, my childhood was great.
Yeah.
Like they're definitely like, yeah, it was hard, but
like, oh, I remember my mom trying to struggle to save $200 to buy us Christmas gifts or something.
Working 3 jobs just
exactly.
To get us meat. Yeah,
that's why you said the ideal. Your parents aren't there enough for you when they are doing all those jobs or whatever. So
right.
But then again, I know a lot of upper middle class people that are away on business, you know, aren't there for their children because they're working so hard, blah, 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 X, Y, Z. So I don't think there is an ideal childhood, but I would say one spent with a decent amount of time with your parents, friends, building relationships. Apparently, like, the number one thing that, like, brings us joy and makes us happy, obviously, is a feeling of, like, purpose. You know, you have to feel purpose. You have to have, like, hobbies and shit. But what the main thing was, and it seems to be this way from multiple studies, is a feeling of, like, relationship and having, like, those close relationships. And I'm not talking, like, one or two, which is great, but I'm talking multiple fulfilling relationships and multiple filling conversations every single day. Those are super important.
Right. I think that's making me think of what would be a good way to raise a kid if you have a lot of money and a lot of time, like, because there's definitely some spoiled kids who have this fortunate upbringing that get everything they want, and whether their parents are there or not, like, they get everything that they want, and then whenever it's time to be an adult, like, it's completely new to them. It's a whole new territory because they're just so used to things being handed them on a plate. What do you think, like, the way to be raised in that situation would be?
Responsibility is definitely a huge part of that. I don't think, and this goes for people that are poor as well, if your kid comes to you with a broken toy, right, for example, and you go, oh, like, give me that, and you fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Kind of. You created dependence, though. Yeah. Instead of being like, oh, shit, it's broken, throw it in the garbage. See what they do. Usually they're like, what? No, like, it could have been fixed, and you're like, no, I don't think it could have been. No, it could have been fixed. Okay, yeah, go ahead and try it. They spend, 2 hours when it could have taken you 2 minutes, but they learn to fix things on their own. That's like a small example, but it's like, okay, you just taught them independence. They don't need to depend on you for everything.
Okay. It's you skipped one that I thought you were going to go for.
Okay.
So there's 3 different routes, I think. So there's either one, the first one that you said,
responsibility,
which is just the parent fixing it, just being like, okay, here it is.
Yeah.
Here, take it back. There's the one that you just said, 2, which is being like, fuck it, it's trash now, and they're like, oh, I'll do it, because they want their toy back.
Right.
And there's 3, the one that I thought you were going to say, which is the parent showing them how to fix it, which I think
definitely
would
a good
be
way
the
to go.
ideal way to do it.
True, and I wouldn't say there was an ideal way necessarily, because I think all three
Teaches
are like
different things.
teaches different things are
Right.
good routes to go. But like that's just a small example of like responsibility. There's so much more that goes into
Bro,
parenting
isn't that
and shit.
fucking nuts? Isn't that fucking nuts? Like, just like something small like that can make a kid who they are.
For sure.
Like, I feel like maybe a lot of people that grow into engineering degrees or people that want to do a lot of building or something like that probably get it from something like that. Maybe from strict parents even.
Yeah.
Like because you have an engineering degree.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you had something similar to that? Do you think something led to that? You
I
had
would
to fix your
consider
own
my
toys?
upbringing to be
Not necessarily strict, but
no. I mean, it was. I had like, what normal kids have is like bedtimes, times to be home, curfews, and all that.
right.
But a lot of people don't grow up with any of that stuff. There were certain things I was allowed to do and not allowed to do. And then there were certain things that I do think were a little bit more strict than other kids. And honestly, sometimes it's hard for me to remember my childhood because I think I just blocked it out. But yeah, no, and you know what about engineers? First of all, a lot of engineers that I meet are very socially awkward.
Mm-hmm.
So more than likely, their parents did only one of those three things that we just talked about, if that's part of it. But they were like, fix this yourself. Because they don't, a lot of the engineers I meet don't have social issues, or don't have an idea of how to be social. They're very weird people, but they're very good at what they do.
So do you think maybe parents should kind of equally disperse those three different types of like methods?
If they can, yeah. And I hope their child is, I don't know how to word this, but like I hope their child comes to them 3 separate times, for those applications to happen.
Yeah.
So I think you
Rather
could
than-
probably
yeah.
get 2 out of 3 on one fucking toy. You might be able to be like, oh, like why don't you work on this and come back in 10 minutes and let's see how far you got. Boom.
True.
They come back in 10 minutes. I got like half of it. I got this wheel back on. It's like, oh, great job. Let's get this other wheel back on and let me show you how to do it a little bit faster and a little bit better.
Right.
I think that's probably like the ideal way, maybe, is to somehow incorporate 2 or 3 of those.
See, you know what, dude? Thinking about it, I grew up with parents that would fix it for me. They would fix it for me, or I just wouldn't tell them about it. Just because you said that, it made me think. Like a lot of times, I remember like things that I had that I just never got around fixing because I just didn't ask my parents to fix it, and I didn't bother myself to fix it. And thinking about like I have my really cool one wheel that I look really cool whenever I ride. By the
Really
way,
cool.
I wear sunglasses and a wife beater, and I
Right.
just look awesome.
Right.
And yeah,
And you're usually like doing biceps on it too, like
Right,
you're
yeah.
fucking curling.
it's like I'm doing
like 80-pound weights on each
farmers
arm. though.
carries, but except I'm not walking at
With
all.
like girls though.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're like dangling off my forearms.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, I look really cool when I'm on that, but it broke, so I can't look cool anymore.
Okay.
But whenever it broke, I just like I did look into it like a little bit. Like I opened it up, and then I saw that the warranty was void if I opened it any further. I was like, "Fuck it, I want to figure out what it is." I couldn't find what it was, so I just kind of looked at it and I was like, "I don't know. I have no clue." And then I told my parents about it, and they were like, "Huh." And then like that, I mean, there's more than that, but I mean, basically that was the gist. They were like, "Oh, I don't know," and then but they didn't look into it. I mean, they didn't really care, but like because they didn't look into it, I was like, "Well, fuck it, I got a new one," because I'm spoiled. I bought it myself, but still, like it's just because I was just like, I wasn't born to be like independent like that, which I guess I should have tried, but
See, 50-50. That's why I always think like it's never like the parent's sole fault. Like I said, you can't meet a child's every need and blah 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 X
Right.
Y Z. But what I think, and this is diving deep into like a personal feeling you might have, is it's possible that you felt neglected in different times when you needed that. Oh, here, like let's work on this, and you didn't get that. Or it was just let me fix it. Just go, let me fix it. And then you were like, okay. And you that's why you didn't go to them again, because they fixed it, but not out of like, oh, here, buddy, let me fix it. More like, just give me it.
You sound like my mom right now. That's exactly what my mom would say. Like,
Right.
I gotta do everything right here. Like, and she would just do it. She would do
But-
it. She wouldn't tell me how to do it. Just do it.
And a lot of that is based off of something that I'm continuing to learn that I think is super important at this point in time. And I think it's super important for a lot of people to understand it. And if their parents and grandparents even are still alive, it's something that like you need to get in touch with. Or you could do it in like a different sense. There's so many ways to do it, but it's generational trauma. Because their parents did things likely that same way. So then they're reacting how their parents reacted because that's all they know. That's what they know to do. So what we have to do as a whole generation, which I think is somewhere we're going, so I do like to see it, but is generational trauma work. So we see like our parents acting that way. We're not going to treat our children that way. We refuse to do it. We're breaking those generational trauma bonds, which is super important in my beliefs. And I think in a lot of, you see it in psychology today, you see it in fucking everything that people post. It's one of the most important things that I think we can do as a generation as a whole.